If you stick around comics long enough, you come to realize one fact. Marvel gets beat up more than DC. Why is that? Are they asking for it? Is there something about their comics that are just weirder or cringier or more obnoxious than DC comics? I've had people argue with me about this, but I can always win this argument because you can point to a number of things. You can just listen to your average comic shop, and you can come to the point where yes, Marvel does take more beatings than DC. Why? Hey everybody, this is Perch. I did a video similar to this of just kind of, is it true that Marvel takes more hits? But as time goes by and I see more comments and I address more people, there's more to this topic than I've talked about before. And it's simply the premise here is that Marvel just gets a harder rap or is held to a bigger standard than DC does. And what I mean by that is if you take your average kind of stroll through a comic shop, if you could, or you go online, you look at the comments people make, Marvel does get more insults, attacks. People tend to hold the creators to a slightly higher standard. If Marvel, it's just their comics are under a little bit more scrutiny. DC has just a little bit more leeway, and of course, the independents have all kinds of leeway. With some exceptions, but generally speaking, Marvel is under a microscope. Now, why? Well, one answer is that Marvel's the market leader, usually unit and dollar, but almost always one of those, and most of the time both. And when you're the leader, you take more hits. You've got a bigger target. You've got more scrutiny. You've got more people looking at you. So of course you're going to have more feedback, more critique, more criticism to what you do. It's not unusual. That's not uncommon. That's not even weird. But there's another aspect to it, and this one's the slightly harder one to prove, because I'll watch people, I'll do videos where I talk about, was this a good idea, or what's going on with Captain Marvel here, or and I do not do. I mean, if you're a listener to this channel, I do not do the videos about Captain Marvel's the worst, most horrible thing in the world. There's lots of other channels that do that. Every now and then I do a video talking about these topics because it's something to cover. It's something people are talking about. I'm trying to cover why. I'm trying to make sense out of this world. But when I do that, there's almost always somebody who comes in who wants to talk about how it's the fans who are toxic or the fans who are bad, or it's they want to turn around to the fans, and no argument there. There's definitely toxic, whatever quote unquote toxic. I don't like that word because it's a catch-all word for a lot of things, but there's definitely the case of fans that go out of control, fans that can't stop themselves, fans that want to complain about everything, fans that get too wrapped up in the world. Definitely that's true. But there's also something true about Marvel, and that's Marvel, in addition to being a market leader, also tends to make sure everybody knows it. If you've been to a convention, if you've gone to panels, if you've talked to Marvel representatives, and here's where, if you're a comic retailer, there's always going to be comic retailers who, of course, will say nice things about people they know, but 9 times out of 10, or maybe 99 times out of 100, if you do a little survey and you take the names out of it, you take the buddies and the reps that maybe people are fond of out of it, and you just say which publisher comes off as slightly more arrogant, slightly more full of themselves, slightly more believing that, the hype that they are the dominant and people should suck up to them, Marvel's going to get named over and over again. You go to a convention, who's going to be the retailer that's going to potentially throw a fit about the poster you're using in front of your shop stand? It's going to be Marvel. And you could say, well, they're just protective of their brand. Yeah, but they also tend to do so in an obnoxious way. And I know I'm making a blanket statement. I know there's exceptions to the rule. There absolutely are exceptions to the rule, and there's very wonderful people at Marvel, flat out. There's definitely good people. It's not a blanket statement by stretch of the imagination. But I can go down the line and list people who are the opposite. When I was looking and poking around into digital, I was dealing with a guy named Ira. He then left Marvel, went to Fox, I think Fox Sports. He was a jerk. I'm sure he was a lovely person to family and neighbors and friends, and I'm sure there are people who had great experiences with him. But um, I went down the line of both tech partners, and these were not small companies, and these were companies like Square Enix, Microsoft, Amazon, and he was a pain in the butt to deal with. This is what other companies thought of him. Why? Because he would say things like, "Well, we're Marvel. You should do a little bit extra for us." There's little things. It's arrogance, and in many ways, I can expand it further. If you've done business with Disney or you've engaged with Disney in the past, Disney also carries themselves that way. They are the market leader, and they know it, and they let you know it. And and again, blanket statement. There's wonderful people at Disney. I have close personal friends who work at Disney, all different parts of the groups, and I value them highly. They're some of the most humble, down to earth people, religious, not religious, just across board, just wonderful people. And that said, all of them would also name, as long as they're not doing it on the record, they know their company has some, big headed, egotistical jerks in it. And Marvel and Disney, sorry, they do have. I mean, it's a good relationship in a lot of cases because both groups do carry themselves at times this way. Joe Quesada, when he took his position at Marvel, was kind of a fan friendly choice because he spoke like the fans. He was seen as being on the fans' side. He was a buddy to the fans. And in more recent years, he carries himself a little differently. And that behavior, even if it's very small, very subtle. By the way, there's lots of people in comics. I've talked to many creators saying, "No, Joe is a wonderful guy." Yeah, he's a wonderful guy to you in the industry. But to fans, to readers, to people who are not in the industry, they get a little bit of an air of somebody who's bigger than them. It comes across that way. And maybe this is inevitable. If you're a market leader, if you're in a high position, you're gonna generate these moments. It's not always fair. I want to point out, it's not always fair. You definitely do have fans who pester and pick, and then the creator finally gets fed up and strikes back at them, and and then suddenly they're branded a egotistical jerk. Yeah, that's not fair, but it's life. It's kind of the nature of the business. But on the whole, by and large, if you're just comparing apples to apples, Marvel has always behaved and treated themselves as a little bit of a "you have to earn our love" business. And I can say this again from a retailer perspective, going to conventions, having a shop, getting material, talking to reps, Marvel has just always been slightly more difficult to deal with than DC. Now, that's a general statement. There's been very nice people I've dealt with at Marvel. There's been complete jerks at DC. No doubt about it. But on the whole, that's tends to be the air and the atmosphere it gives off. Now, if you're a fan or you're a reader or you're a comic, you become attuned to these things. You become attuned to this idea that when you think somebody thinks when you believe that somebody else believes they're better than you, it definitely, it makes you more critical. It makes you less tolerant. It makes you more prone to be irritated when they act up or when they make mistakes. And there's also this nature, if somebody kind of carries themselves with their nose up in the air, when they fail, you tend to take more pleasure in that. That's another just human nature. It's how people are. And I think Marvel has slipped into that time and time again. It's not, I'm not, again, I think I've said this for the 50th time. It's not a blanket statement. It's not everyone. There's some definitely nice, good people in all of these companies, and just like there are bad people in these companies. But I wanted to offer this up as one reason why perhaps Marvel gets a bit more critique, a bit more criticism, a bit less of a leash, a bit more fans kind of becoming frustrated with them. It's because they do ask for it from time to time by some people in the company. CB Cebulski is somebody who, again, came in as a very friendly, good-natured guy, seen as a fan emissary. And then some of his comments online, some of his behavior gave the impression that he felt he was better than them. Maybe he didn't even mean it, but this was how he was coming across. One of the most valuable things, by the way, you can have in life is a true friend who will call you out or tell you when you're doing something or behaving in a way that you don't even see. It's completely outside of you. That's that it's a gift. A lot of people can't take that gift, but it's a gift when somebody will be honest with you about where maybe you're coming across in a way you can't even see. If you ever get somebody who's willing to be that for you, treasure it. Try not to spit in their face if they try and give you some honest advice. It's just a way you can be happier in life. Anyway, what do you think? Leave me a comment below. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.